Hey everyone, Ryan here at eTrailer. Today on our 2022 Jeep Grand Cherokee new body, we're going to be showing you how to install the Roadmaster Smart Diode wiring kit for towed vehicles. Before we do that though, let's take a minute, check them out, and make sure they're going to work for you. Before we jump right in, I thought it'd be useful just to try to answer one of the big questions, one of the main ones that we get when it comes to setting up a flat tow. And that's, what parts am I actually going to need to tow my vehicle down the road? And you're going to have 5 main parts. The first will be your base plate, which gives you an attachment point to allow you to hook up your tow bar. So that tow bar is going to be the physical link that actually connects the front of your vehicle to the back of your coach. Third main part, you'll have safety cables, and these are just there in the event of an unlikely disconnect. They're going to keep everything paired together. The fourth main part will be your tow bar wiring, and that'll just transfer the lighting signals from the back of your motorhome to the back of your vehicle, keeping you safe and legal. And last but not least, the fifth main part will be a supplemental braking system. And what this is going to do is hit the brakes in your Jeep whenever you hit the brakes in your coach, helping to bring you to a more predictable and safe stop. With that out of the way though, this is a good example on how the wiring is going to work. So we got the right turn signal going on our motorhome, and then sending it to the right turn signal here on the back of our Jeep. And the same is going to hold true for the left turn, your tail lights, and your brake lights. So you kind of have, all your bases covered there. There are other wiring kits available that will work, but this is the one that I always recommend for these particular vehicles. And I say it because these Jeeps, there's a lot of different packages and options that you can get with these things. With the park sense and lane detection, all this stuff, all this technology, right? And with this particular diode kit, it's going to work across the board with all of them. So regardless if you have a base model or the fully loaded one or anything in between, this kit is going to work properly and not interfere with any of your other factory components. Something that is really important when it comes to flat towing is the ease of use, right? Is everything straightforward and easy to set up, and it don't get much simpler with a kit like this. So once everything's installed, it stays there, and all you're going to have to do is plug in to the back of your motorhome, all right? And then that cable will run to the front of your Jeep. You plug it into there, and that's all there is to it. So really not complicated at all. And there are 2 different versions of this particular kit available. And the only difference is going to be a couple things. One of the kits is going to come with your wiring, your diodes, your ins and outs, to help you install it, as well as a 6-way round connector and this cable. And so, you'll use that kit in a situation like ours, where our tow bar didn't come included with a cable. Our tow bar doesn't have channels in it. Instead, it utilizes this cable management system here, where the coiled type of cable makes sense. With it being coiled, it's going to keep up off the ground when you're going straight, but have the ability to stretch when you make those turns. The other kit available is going to be the bare bones, essentially, what I like to call it. You'll get your wiring, your diodes, and those ins and outs, but it's not going to come with the 6-way or a cable at all. And I feel like they do that because some of the tow bars, like the Roadmaster Nighthawk, for example, comes with the cable and the connector. So if you're in a situation like that, it makes sense to buy that bare bones kit. Or if you happen to, let's say you don't have them components, but you have a tow bar that has channels in it, right? Some of the tow bars, like I believe it's the Falcon, has these channels which allow you to run your cables through there. So if you have a setup like that, you can get the bare bones kit, and then Roadmaster offers these cables that are straight or a hybrid type one, where you can pick that up, and having that style of cable allow you to properly utilize those channels in your tow bar. So regardless of the situation you find yourself in, on what you may or may not have already, there's definitely a solution for you. But other than that, when it comes down to it, really a no-brainer to use a kit like this. Works across the board with the different packages, if you will, You know, there's going to be an option for you and what you need as far as the style of cable and everything. And they're reliable. You know, we do a ton of them here, and it's very rare that we ever run into any issues with them. So you should be in pretty good shape. As far as the installation goes, it's not that it's really complicated per se. It's definitely time consuming, just having to route wires from the front all the way to the back. But the good news is you do it one time, and then you'll have something really easy to use and reliable from then on out. So stay focused. You should be in pretty good shape. That in mind though, why don't we go ahead, pull into the garage and get started on it now. To begin our installation for our tow bar wiring, first thing we need to do is take the big bundle of wire and route it down to the front of our Jeep. Now I got the front end taken apart because we're doing this the same time that we're doing our base plate, which is definitely what I recommend. You need a lot more room to work, but it can be done with the front end back together. And something to think about too, you know, if you're doing other components at the same time, think that through. And if you can kind of save a little time routing wires, it's definitely the way to do it. So perfect example, on our vehicle today, I'm doing a battery charge on kit. Essentially going to take the same path to route down towards the front. So that's what that red wire is, in case you're wondering. But with that said, I took our bundle, straightened it out, and our wire, just kind of ran it through here. This is where it comes down and runs over to our mounting location for our connector plug. As far as getting our connector plug hooked up, which I already just did my charge line, so that's how that looks. But as far as the tow bar wiring, I'm going to take the dust cover, put your wiring through it. Just going to push that up and out of the way for now. And then each one of these wires you want to carefully separate. So take a pair of snips and cut them between them and get them started there. And I peel them apart, maybe 3 or 4 inches usually. And one thing that I like to do, kind of bring them all back together and cut maybe, you know, a 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch off, kind of give us a fresh start there in case we nicked one of them when we were separating them. But each end, I'm going to strip the insulation back, and you want to twist the wires as well to get them nice and tight. So with these two done, do the same thing for our yellow and green there. We got all the ends stripped, and then if you look at our connector plug, it's going to be labeled. So I have TM for taillights, so the brown wire goes there. This one's GD for ground, so the white wire plugs into that. And then LT for left turn, so the yellow wire goes there. RT for right turn, so the green wire gets plugged into that. And you want to take these set screws and back them out almost all the way. And take the appropriate wire and we'll place it into the terminal. And hold that down. Tighten up the set screw, and I'll just work my way around until I have all the wires hooked up here. Here's how the back of our connector is going to look once everything is hooked up. And what you can do now is take the dust cover and put that over it. Something I usually like to do, but I like to wait to the very end once you verified everything is working properly, is apply some sealer to all these terminals. That way it'll dry up and help prevent corrosion and things of that nature. So I will come back and do that at the end, but for the time being, I'll pop that on and get this out of the way. And I'm just going to essentially just temporarily mount this up here. Back inside of the engine compartment now where our wiring comes up, the white wire is going to have to be a ground. All right, and I think I'm going to ground it right here on this factory bolt. Good clean metals around it and should work out pretty well. So what I'm going to do, I want to take your white wire and cut it to length. So just very carefully cut just the white wire there. And I'll start to kind of separate each end. And we want to work with the end that is going to our connector plug up front. So I'll shorten this a little bit more here. You'll strip that back, twist it, and this is how we're going to make all of our electrical connections, whether it be a ring terminal or a butt connector or a spade terminal, they all work the same. You slide it over the bare end of the wire and crimp it down. Then that bolt that I'm going to use has a 10mm head. I'll pull it out. We'll put our bolt through it and tighten it back down. Then for the rest of the white wire, we still have a big section of it, right? It's going to nothing. You just want to peel that off of the harness and hold on to it for later because we're probably going to use it here in a moment. I've continued now at this point to route our 3 remaining wires towards the back of the Jeep. So I just kind of went through here and in this little pocket, it's pretty tricky to see, but you can take the wires and drop them down and essentially they're going to come out on the bottom side of your Jeep. Now, before we get underneath there and continue to route, I'm going to go to the back and pull our taillights out, make it a little bit easier to get our wiring into place when we get to that point. To get your taillights out, you can open up the hatch and you're going to have this plastic little cover here, and with this, you can just kind of pry it off the vehicle, just kind of snaps into place. Then you can grab a T30 Torx bit, pull that fastener out. And for the tail light, you want to just kind of hit it this way towards the back. Kind of carefully just work it out like that. Then we can disconnect it. So this red tab here, pull back on it. And sometimes it helps if you actually take the connector and push it together more, then push down on that center tab, separate it. So I'll set our light and tail light off to the side and do the same thing to get the passenger side one out. What I'm going to do now is take a pull wire. This is a piece of tubing I have. You can use another thick piece of wire, take a metal coat hanger, straighten it out, something like that. And I'm just going to drop it from the taillight pocket down to the bottom of our vehicle, and that way when we route our wiring back, you know, we can reach up there when we get to this point, tape our wires to it, and be able to easily kind of pull them up into position. Now moving underneath of our vehicle, we're here at the front, and right here in this area, this is where our wiring dropped down from the engine compartment. When you're routing this, you want to do your best to avoid any hot or moving parts and use some zip ties every now and again to keep it secure. So underneath our car, there was this felt panel that I loosened up. So every now and again, there's just a 10mm head bolt you pull out. Makes it a lot easier to see what you're doing. But our wiring is essentially just going to run along the side of our frame here with some of the other factory lines. So it goes all the way back through here, and then it's going to go actually up and over our rear subframe. It shoots up along through here, and it's going to drop down right here in this area, and at this point we can do a couple other things. So right here, this is where the wires drop down, and what I did was separate them into individual strands. Eventually the yellow one and the green one is So yellow will go to the driver's side, green will go to the passenger side, but right here in this area, I actually cut the brown wire in half and stripped the insulation back. And then I took the bundle of white wire that we saved, and what I'm going to do is twist those two ends together. Essentially, this is just a jumper wire for a taillight circuit. All right, so here's the other end of the brown wire, so where I cut it. And on this end, I crimped on a butt connector, which this is going to go to the driver's side. And I opted to upgrade to a heat shrink style butt connector because the ends will seal up, protecting against corrosion a little bit better. But the one that comes in the kit will work fine. Just make sure you tape it up real good. But how these heat shrinks work, it's pretty simple. Crimp it down. And you can come in with a heat source and seal them up. So I went ahead and taped up our connection that we made there for a little extra protection. And the yellow and brown is just going to shoot along through here towards the driver's side, where I have it taped to our pull wire. That way we can pull it up into the taillight pocket. For the white and green wire, essentially set up the same exact way. It just runs along over through here, where it ends up meeting with our pull wire that we dropped down. So unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to finish up the rest of this installation with you guys, so my buddy Brad is going to jump in and take over. He's really experienced with this type of thing, and he'll get you going and get everything wrapped up.
Our diodes are going to splice into our factory taillight wiring. So in order to gain access to our wire, we have this insulation tape that's wrapped around it. We're going to want to peel this back, and sometimes you can catch the edge of it, but if not, what you're going to want to do is just make a small cut in this insulation tape and peel it back. Just make sure that you're not damaging the wires in the process. We're going to peel this pretty much all the way back. That way we have some room to be able to get our diode spliced in. Gone ahead and tested our wires to make sure that we have the proper ones to splice into, and on our passenger side we're going to be looking for this yellow wire, so just kind of separate this back. And I like to go a little bit further back than the plug. That way you have some room to plug this back in and it's not going to bind up. So we'll go ahead, we'll cut this. And these are fairly small gauge wires, so as we strip this back, you might want to go back a little bit extra, and that way we can peel that wire over. We'll then take one of our spade connectors, get this crimped down. And with all of your spade connectors, you do want to make sure that you are crimping them down really nicely, and also give it a quick tug once you're done, especially on small gauge wire like this. It's pretty common that this can slide off, and you really don't want to have to go back and trace any loose connections. So just make sure it's done right the first time. We'll then go ahead on the other end, and we're going to get our other spade connector on. Now we'll grab our diode and we'll start to make our connections. So first we'll go with the yellow wires that we just spliced from the connector. So we'll have car out, and that'll face towards the plug. On car in is where we'll attach that other wire, the yellow one here, making that connection for our factory wires. Now with our yellow and brown wires that we pulled up, pretty easy here. We have our RV tail in. That's going to be our brown wire. And then our RV brake in is going to be our yellow wire. And that just leaves us with one more male connector, and that's going to be for our ground. So with the white wire included in the kit, we're going to make a small jumper with a ring terminal here. We'll go ahead and get this self-tapped in. Somewhere along in here should be fine. So I'll grab my impact and my self-tapping screw and get this mounted up first. And with our ground attached, we'll go ahead, we can get our taillights plugged back in. Now something that I'm going to do just to kind of give it a little bit more structural rigidity long term is run some electrical tape around our wires. That way it doesn't put any unnecessary stress putting strain on the wires. So I'll go ahead and get that wrapped up. We'll put our taillight back in, make sure to lock it in place, and then we'll head over to the other side. Passenger side is going to be very similar like we did on the driver's side. The difference is our yellow wire is obviously going to be our green, but that's going to go to our RV brake in. Now on the plug that we tie into from the factory, it's going to be a green wire. So just make those splices, and just like we did on the other side, we'll put our plug side to car out, and then the side by the vehicle harness to the car in. With our taillights put back in place, the last step we need to do before hitting the road is test to make sure that our diodes are working properly. We're going to be using a test box to simulate hooking up to an RV. You probably don't have one of these at home, so the best bet, take your umbilical, hook this up to the 7-pole on your RV. You're going to want to run through the light signals and check the taillights on your towed vehicle to make sure that they correspond. So we'll start with our running lights. Next we'll do our left turn signal, our right turn signal, and then finally our brakes.
And that'll finish up our look at and our installation of the Roadmaster Smart Diode Wiring Kit on our 2022 Jeep Grand Cherokee new body.